Call came on a Tuesday morning, and I remember exactly what I was doing when it happened. I was standing in the kitchen of our apartment in Columbus, Ohio, pouring coffee I hadn't asked for into a mug I'd bought at a garage sale for 50 cents. My husband had made it before he left for work. He always did that, made the coffee, left it on the counter, never said anything about it. Just did it. That's the kind of man he was. His name was Daniel. He was 31 years old, and he drove a delivery route for a logistics company out of Westerville. He'd been doing it for 4 years. He liked the early mornings, he said, liked having the roads mostly to himself. The call came at 7:42 a.m. A woman identified herself as being from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. She asked if I was the wife of Daniel Reyes, and something in the way she said wife, past tense leaning into the present, that careful, deliberate neutrality, told me before she finished the sentence. He had been struck by a semi that ran a red light on Route 40. He was pronounced dead at the scene. I don't remember sitting down. I must have, because my sister-in-law found me on the kitchen floor 40 minutes later with the phone still in my hand and the coffee going cold on the counter. I was 28 years old. I was 6 months pregnant. The baby came 11 days after the funeral. She wasn't supposed to come until February. It was November. My body, I think, had simply run out of ways to hold everything together at once. My water broke at 2 a.m., and I drove myself to Riverside Methodist because my sister-in-law lived 40 minutes away and I didn't want to wait. I know. I know that was stupid. I did it anyway. My daughter was born at 3:17 in the morning, weighing 4 pounds, 2 ounces. They took her straight to the NICU. I didn't get to hold her for 6 days. They named the condition bronchopulmonary dysplasia. Her lungs hadn't fully developed. She needed a ventilator. She needed specialists. She needed to stay in that hospital for as long as it took. And the bills were already starting to stack up on the small table by the window in my room. And I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in 11 days, and my husband was dead, and I was alone in a way I had never been alone in my life. Her name is Nora. I had decided on that name 3 weeks before Daniel died, lying on the couch with his hand on my stomach, watching something neither of us was really watching. He said it sounded like someone who knew what she wanted. I told him that was a strange thing to say about a name. He said he meant it as a compliment. Nora, 4 pounds, 2 ounces, breathing through a machine. I called my mother the morning after Nora was born. It was early, maybe 6, and I didn't care about the hour. My parents lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. They'd retired there 3 years earlier. My father had done well enough in commercial real estate that they could afford to, and they liked the warmth, they said. They liked not having to shovel snow. My mother answered on the second ring. I told her what had happened. I told her Nora was in the NICU and that I needed help. I needed someone to come. I needed someone to be there with me because I did not know how to do this by myself. There was a pause, not a short one. Then she told me that she and my father were leaving for Sedona in 3 days. They had been planning the trip for 8 months. They had a rental house booked, a tour of the Red Rocks, dinner reservations at a place that required booking 6 weeks in advance. She said they had already paid for most of it and that refunds weren't really possible at this point. I asked her how much the non-refundable portion was. She said around $4,200. I told her I would pay it back. I told her I would write her a check the moment I got home. The moment any of this stabilized, I would pay back every dollar. I just needed her to come. I just needed her to come. I just needed someone in that hospital room who loved me. Another pause. She said she'd talk to my father and call me back. She didn't call back that day. She didn't call back the next day either. On the third day, my brother called instead. His name is Wade. He's 4 years older than me, and he's always been more our parents' child than I ever was. Same practicality, same tendency to look at a crisis and calculate the cost before the need. Wade told me that Mom and Dad had decided to go to Sedona. I sat with that for a moment. I asked him if he was sure. He said, "Look, Petra, you know they love you, but you have Daniel's life insurance, don't you? And the hospital has payment plans. You're not actually going to lose your daughter because of a bill." I want to be precise about something. He was not entirely wrong about the payment plans. He was not entirely wrong about the insurance, though the payout was taking time to process and the immediate costs were not waiting for it. What he was wrong about, what all three of them were wrong about, was the part where love is supposed to show up in the room, physically. In the room. With you. I told him I understood. I didn't say anything else. I didn't cry. I had gotten very good at not crying on the phone by that point. I hung up and I sat in the chair next to Nora's incubator and I looked at her. This tiny, fragile, furious little person attached to more wires than I could count. And I made a decision. Not about money, not about logistics. A decision about who would be in my life going forward and who wouldn't. I didn't announce it. I didn't send a message. I just noted it quietly the way you note a door closing, and then I focused on my daughter. The NICU stay lasted 41 days. I was there every day. Daniel's mother, a woman named Ruth who I had not always had the easiest relationship with, drove up from Cincinnati 3 days after I called her and stayed for 2 weeks. She slept on my couch. She made soup I didn't ask for. She held Nora for the first time so I could shower without listening for alarms. She cried the way I couldn't yet. I will love that woman until I die. Daniel had a small life insurance policy through his employer, $250,000. It took 63 days to process. In the meantime, Ruth loaned me $12,000 out of her own savings, which she told me she didn't need back. I paid her back anyway, every cent, 11 months later. I didn't speak to my parents during that time. I didn't speak to Wade. They called twice in the first month, my mother once, Wade once, and I let it go to voicemail both times and never returned the calls. I wasn't performing. I wasn't punishing. I had simply decided that people who choose a vacation over a crisis do not get to occupy space in the worst chapter of my life. Nora came home on January 9th. She weighed 6 pounds, 4 ounces. She had a very specific look she gave me when she was hungry, that I came to think of as her board meeting face. Utterly serious. Zero tolerance for delay. I rebuilt slowly. I went back to work. I'm a school speech-language pathologist, so I work in a district. When Nora was 8 months old, Ruth watched her 2 days a week. A neighbor covered a third. I pieced it together the way you piece together anything when there is no alternative to piecing it together. My parents sent a card when Nora was born. A card with a $20 gift card to Target tucked inside. I kept the gift card. I threw away the card. For 4 years, I had no contact with my mother, my father, or Wade. Not because I was waiting for an apology, not because I thought they would change, because I had made a decision, and the decision was that my daughter deserved a life built on people who showed up. Full stop. Then, in the fall of Nora's 4th year, Wade texted me. He said our father had had a heart attack. He said it was serious and that I should know. He said our mother was at the hospital and that she was asking for me. I read the text 3 times. I didn't respond. 2 days later, he called. I answered this time because some part of me, the part that will apparently never fully close the door, needed to know the facts. My father was stable. He was going to recover. They were keeping him for observation. Wade said, I know we haven't talked. I know things are hard between us, but they're not getting any younger, Petra, and I think you should consider. I said, consider what exactly? He said I should consider reconnecting, for Nora's sake, so she would know her grandparents. I told him that the grandparents she knew had shown up when she needed them. I told him that Ruth, who lived 3 hours away and had driven through a snowstorm to sit in a hospital waiting room, was the grandmother my daughter would grow up knowing. I told him that I wished our father a full recovery, sincerely, and I hung up. That was not the end of it. 8 months after that call, my father had a second cardiac event. This one was fatal. He was 67 years old. My mother called me directly this time. I picked up. She was crying in the way I remembered from childhood. Not dramatic, just sustained, like a slow leak she couldn't stop. She told me what had happened. She told me the date of the service. She said she hoped I would come. I went to the funeral, for reasons I still don't fully understand and have stopped trying to. Maybe because Nora asked about her grandpa, because somehow she knew, the way children know things. Maybe because I needed to close something. I sat in the back. I did not speak to my mother more than what was required. I held Nora's hand the whole time. At the reception at my parents' house, a house in Scottsdale I had only been to twice, which felt about right, Wade found me in the kitchen. He'd gotten older, we both had. He was holding a glass of something and he had that careful look he gets when he's about to say something he's rehearsed. He told me that our father had left a will. He told me that the estate, the house in Scottsdale, some investments, a retirement account, came to somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million, depending on market timing and what the house sold for. Then he told me what the will said. Our father had left everything to our mother with a stipulation that upon her death, the full estate would pass to Wade. My name was not in it. I looked at my brother for a long moment, then I asked him why he was telling me this. He said in this very careful voice that he wanted to be upfront. He said he felt that I should know, and that he personally felt it was unfair, but that his hands were tied by the document. He said he hoped we could move forward as a family. I said, I see. I got Nora's coat. I left. In the car driving through Scottsdale in the dark, Nora fell asleep in her car seat and I drove for a while without going anywhere in particular. I just drove, the way you do when you need the movement but have nowhere to go. I thought about what 4 years of building looked like. The $12,000 from Ruth. The 63 days waiting for the insurance check. The 41 days in the NICU. The $20 Target gift card. The card they didn't bother to sign with anything more than, love, Mom and Dad. I thought about $4,200, which is what it would have cost them to come. I thought about my daughter, asleep in the back seat, who had never missed a thing she never knew she was supposed to have. When I got home, I called my attorney. Not because I was certain about anything, because I needed to understand my options before I decided what to do with them. My attorney, whose name is Laura and who is the kind of person that makes you feel like the situation is manageable even when it isn't, told me that Arizona does recognize certain claims in estate disputes, particularly where there is evidence of intent to disinherit without formal disinheritance proceedings, or where a dependent was excluded under circumstances that may constitute inequity. She told me she would need to review the will and the full financial picture. She told me not to talk to Wade in the meantime. I did not talk to Wade. What I did was gather everything. Daniel's death certificate, Nora's NICU records and the associated billing statements, the voicemails my parents left, the two of them, in that first month, the ones I never returned. I had kept them. I don't entirely know why. I had kept them the way you keep things. You're not sure what to do with. And it turned out that not knowing what to do with something is sometimes the right decision. Laura told me there was a path. It was not guaranteed. It would cost money I would rather spend on other things. But there was a path. I sat with that for 3 weeks. I talked to Ruth about it. She said, you do whatever gives Nora what she deserves. Don't do it for yourself. Don't do it for Daniel. Don't do it because you're angry. Do it for her. Then she made me eat a sandwich, which is her solution to most problems, and I love her for it. I thought about what Wade said at the reception, that his hands were tied, that he wanted to be upfront, that he hoped we could move forward. I thought about how the first time I called my mother, the morning after Nora was born, she paused before she answered. That pause, the calculation inside it, the weighing of her rental house and dinner reservations against a daughter and a grandchild she had never met. And I thought about something Laura said, almost offhand, at the end of one of our calls. She said, the thing about inequity is that it tends to have a paper trail. My parents had money, not wealthy by coastal standards money, but genuinely comfortable money. There were brokerage accounts. There was the house. There were records of what they spent in Sedona that week. I found the receipts which Wade had provided as part of the estate documentation. because he was being cooperative in that particular way that was still fundamentally self-serving. They had spent over $6,000 in Sedona that week, the week my daughter was on a ventilator. 4,200, non-refundable. That's what she told me, that's what they couldn't spare. I filed the claim. I'm not going to tell you it was clean. It wasn't. There were months of back and forth, depositions, a mediation session in a conference room in Phoenix where Wade sat across from me and looked like a man who had expected things to go differently. My mother attended one session and cried, and I sat very still and listened to her describe her love for me in terms that had nothing to do with what had actually happened, and I let her finish, and I thanked her for coming, and I did not change my position. The case settled 11 months after I filed. The settlement gave Nora and me 38% of the net estate, which came out to just under $320,000 after fees and taxes. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. I felt tired in the specific way you feel tired when something is over that took too long. I felt like I had spent a year and a half in a room arguing about a door that should never have been closed. But I also felt something else, something I didn't have a word for right away. It took me a few days to find it. It was witnessing, the kind that doesn't require anyone to admit anything or apologize or even acknowledge what happened. The court documents existed, the financial records existed, the voicemails existed, the voicemails existed, the 41 days of NICU billing statements existed. It was all there, in black and white, in a filing that would sit in a county courthouse in Arizona for however long such things sit. Somebody saw it, even if that somebody was just a judge reading a summary in a conference room in Phoenix. Somebody read what had happened and determined that it mattered. Nora is 6 now. She has her father's eyes, that particular dark brown that goes almost black in certain light, and she has what I think of as her own face. A face I had nothing to do with designing. A face that just arrived, fully itself, on a November morning in a hospital room while I was not yet ready. She started first grade this fall. She's extremely opinionated about her lunch. She has a best friend named Zoe who lives 2 blocks over, and they have an ongoing disagreement about whether purple or orange is the superior color that I've been following like a season of television. Ruth came for her birthday in November. She brought a chocolate cake and a purple sweater and argued with Nora, warmly and at length, that orange was, in fact, the correct answer. Nora told her she was wrong with the absolute certainty of someone who has no doubt about this particular matter. I watched them at the kitchen table and I thought about what it means to have someone show up. Not perfectly, not always conveniently, just present, just there. Daniel would have loved this, I thought. He would have made coffee no one asked for and sat at the end of the table and smiled at all of it. And he would not have said anything because sometimes the right thing to do is just be in the room. I set a mug on the counter without thinking about it. Old habit. Then I caught myself and I laughed a little, alone in the kitchen, while my daughter argued with her grandmother about colors. $320,000 is sitting in an account with Nora's name on it, a 5 to 9 and a custodial account split on Laura's advice. It will cover college and then some, and if there's anything left after that, it belongs to Nora to do with as she chooses. My parents chose Sedona. They chose dinner reservations. They chose 41 days of silence while I sat in a hospital chair next to a 4-pound baby and figured out how to keep going. The money doesn't undo that. It doesn't replace Daniel. It doesn't give Nora a grandfather who held her or a grandmother who came. It doesn't buy the version of this story where any of that was different. But it is proof, real, documented, legal proof that what they had was enough to help, and they chose not to. And the world, or at least a small corner of it, a courthouse in Phoenix, looked at that fact and agreed it mattered. Sometimes that's all justice is, not a rewrite, just a record. Nora asked me once why she doesn't have a grandpa and grandma on my side. The way Zoe has 4 of them. She was 5, sitting in the back seat, very serious about it. I thought about what to say for a moment. I told her that some people are family because they're related to you, and some people are family because they show up. I told her she had Ruth, and she had Zoe's mom, who always saves her a seat at soccer, and she had Ms. Torres at school, who put her drawing up on the door. I told her family is just the people who act like it. She thought about that for a minute. Then she said, "Does Ruth count as a grandma?" I said I thought Ruth would be very honored to be asked. 2 days later, Nora called her on the phone, by herself, just picked up my cell and dialed and asked her directly. Ruth cried for about 4 minutes. Nora waited patiently until she was done and then said, "So is that a yes?" Ruth said yes. Of course yes, 1,000 times yes. And that is the ending. Not the settlement, not the courthouse, not the $300,000 in an account with my daughter's name on it. The ending is a 6-year-old on the phone, waiting out an old woman's tears, asking a simple question. Is that a yes? Yes, 1,000 times yes. I thought a lot about that pause, the one my mother took on the phone the morning after Nora was born. It lasted maybe 4 seconds, but I've replayed it more times than I can count because I think everything that followed lived inside it, every choice she made and every choice I made in response. People talk about cause and effect like it's something that happens to you. But most of the time, it's something you build. My parents built something that week they went to Sedona. They didn't think of it that way. They probably thought they were being practical, realistic, financially sensible. They probably told themselves I would be fine. But what they actually built, brick by brick, with every hour they chose not to pick up the phone, was distance. And distance, once it sets, doesn't soften, it calcifies. I'm not someone who believes the universe is keeping score. I don't think my father's heart gave out because he failed me. I don't think the estate settlement was karma delivering what was owed. What I do believe is simpler and, I think, more true. The choices you make when things are hardest reveal what you actually value. And the people who see those choices, really see them, remember. What got me through those 41 days in the NICU wasn't anger. It wasn't even love exactly in the soft greeting card sense of the word. It was something harder. It was the decision to keep going when there was no particular reason to believe going would get easier. Nora needed me functional, so I was functional. I ate when I didn't want to eat. I slept in a hospital chair when sleeping felt impossible. I filed the paperwork and made the calls and showed up every single morning because she was 4 pounds and 2 ounces and she didn't have anyone else. That kind of endurance doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from deciding over and over that you don't get to stop. That's the part I want Nora to understand someday, when she's old enough to hear the story the way it actually happened. Not the part about the money. The $320,000 in the account with her name on it. The part about Ruth driving through a snowstorm. The part about making a decision and holding it. The part about knowing the difference between people who love you in theory and people who love you in practice, and having the clarity to build your life around the second kind. Being a good person, having real integrity, isn't about grand declarations. It's about what you do at 7 a.m. when someone calls and asks you to change your plans. It's about whether you pause and what lives inside the pause. I kept those voicemails for 4 years without knowing why. Turns out that was the smart thing. Not clever, not calculated, just the quiet instinct to hold on to the truth of what happened, even when I didn't yet know what I'd need it for. The settlement didn't fix anything, but it told Nora the truth in a language the world recognizes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what we can do at the end of it. Not rewrite what happened, but insist that it be recorded accurately. She asked me recently if I was sad. I asked her about what? She said, about everything. I thought about it honestly. I told her no. I told her I was tired for a long time and then I wasn't, and now I'm just here, with her, which is the only place I ever actually wanted to be.